Welcome to Everyday Cooking with Ann. Today we're going to make what I consider one of the ultimate comfort foods that I usually make every fall and winter season. And it's Christmas time and a lot of people actually request this recipe because it's so amazing. But it is one of those recipes that kind of takes you the better part of a day to make, which is really kind of fun when you're doing comfort food and it's snowy or cold outside and you want to just come in the kitchen and make something really yummy. So there are several steps to this lasagna that make it very, very special. So I hope you'll pay attention and give this recipe a try. We're going to have several steps today. This morning, we're going to be making the actual sauce with the sausage in it, the actual tomato sauce that we're using in a lasagna. We'll also be teaching a little bit later how to make the bechamel sauce, which is kind of a creamy milk sauce that goes on to make it really creamy. Also the ricotta that's going to be put on the lasagna, and also the noodles. So there's actually 4 steps: the main red sauce, the bechamel sauce, the noodles that we have to cook, and as well as the ricotta that we're putting on, and the mozzarella cheese. So it's quite a few little things that go in this recipe, but once you've tried this once, it will be a keeper. Now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make, I have this in my cookbook. You want to check out my cookbook below at the under Show More if you want to get the recipe for this. I will print the recipe below as well. But this recipe comes as a double lasagna. So I'm going to be making double the recipe on the sauce. However, we'll just be doing the single recipe on the other parts of the sauce. I'll print the whole double recipe below so that you'll have it for 2 lasagnas. You just half it if you just want to do one. But since this takes a little bit of time to make this sauce, that's why I'm doubling it. I'll put the half of it in the freezer for another time so that if I want to just whip up a lasagna for company or for any other reason, I have it ready to go. So we're going to double this recipe, which is the recipe. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to show you some of the ingredients that go into this special sauce. Let's get started. Before I get started though, let's just talk about some of the ingredients that are going here. You want a couple cups of chopped onion. I use a sweet onion in this. You can use brown onions, but a sweet onion's really good. I have some chopped red peppers. I also have a little bit of an orange pepper in here. And I'm using like actually a whole bulb of chopped fresh garlic. You can use the minced garlic that you can find in a bottle, but you'll need 3 tablespoons of that. So I went ahead and just chopped a whole bulb because when it comes to Italian, garlic is the flavor and you honestly can't have too much, I don't think so. This is why we're using this. And I just have a regular Italian seasoning that we're going to put in. We're only going to be using half this can because you only need 6 ounces, but this is tomato paste that we're going to be using in with our 2 cans of crushed Italian tomatoes. We're going to be adding in some brown sugar to offset the kind of acid that's going in with the tomatoes. And we're going to be adding in 2 cups of water. We also are going to start off by sauteing all of this by putting a half a cube of butter. That's 4 ounces of butter. I'm turning on my Dutch oven here, which you're going to want to use a deeper Dutch oven to make this so it doesn't splatter all over your stove. So you want a deeper Dutch oven. So I'm going to turn that on and get that going. And you're also going to be adding in a whole 1/4 cup of olive oil. That's for flavor as well. So butter and olive oil are going in first. And as soon as that kind of melts down, we'll come back and I'm going to add my onions and peppers to start. This on about medium heat, and all my butter's melted and also my olive oil is in. I'm going to go ahead and put the onions in here. And the red and orange peppers. And I'm going to saute these until they're translucent before I add the garlic, because I don't want to burn the garlic or overdo the garlic. So we're going to cook this for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, until they are cooked through a little bit before we add our garlic to it as well. Okay, our peppers and our onions are getting to be a translucent, meaning they've cooked down a little bit here. We're going to go ahead and add all of our garlic in here. Yum, lots of garlic here. I'm going to saute this around for just a little bit to meld those flavors in with the onions and peppers. We have all of our onions and peppers and garlic nicely melded together. And now I'm going to add our tomato sauce with puree. This is a 28-ounce can. And I'm going to be adding 2 cans. And since this is going to be simmering for like about an hour, We're going to be adding water to this, but we also need to add, just to keep it going, to keep it the right consistency, we are going to be adding 6 ounces. Now this is a 12-ounce can of paste. I only needed a 6-ounce can, so I'm going to just be using half of this. Okay. Now this is going to kind of make it a little bit thick, but that's supposed to happen because we are going to be adding the water too. But before we add the water, and then when your sauce is cooking down, the water will start evaporating, but that's okay because you want it not a thin sauce, but kind of a thick sauce. So now that we've added those ingredients, we're going to add our seasonings, which includes the 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. We're going to have 2 teaspoons of salt. I love to use the Himalayan pink salt, and also a teaspoon of black pepper. And we're going to add an entire tablespoon of Italian seasoning. I'll put a little teeny bit more in there. I do have some fresh basil that I'm going to be adding just a little bit later because I don't want it to be totally melted in. I want to tear it in, and so you can see the little flecks of fresh basil. If you don't have fresh basil, you can use dried basil, but we have it in our little garden out in front in our pot, and so we always love to use fresh if we can do that. I'm going to turn this down because it's starting to bubble and we don't want it to sputter out. Okay, now I'm going to be adding the 2 cups of water. You can see it's quite thin, but this will be evaporated in the next hour. And I'm going to keep this on sometime between, you want a slow simmer. So just watch whether it's electric or gas stove, you just want to keep it on medium, but if it starts sputtering too much, turn it down between medium to medium low. But we're trying to get the heat up right now, so we're going to keep that up right now. And then what I do is I put my lid on like this so the steam can escape, but it keeps from splattering all over my stove. So I'm going to let this simmer here for about an hour. But meanwhile, we are going to add some meat to this. So let's go, and I'll show you the kind of meat, the hot sausage that we're going to use, hot Italian sausage, to flavor this sauce as well. We need 1.5 pounds of hot Italian sausage. Now, you can buy any brand. I think Johnsonville is a good brand. This is what I found on sale, so this is what I'm using. But when you find these, like you see, I already have it in my pan ready to chop up. I'm going to turn my heat on here while I'm just talking about it a little bit. But these sausages come in a casing, and so make sure you take the casing off. So I just slit a little bit of right up the casing and take the casing off of the sausage. And then we are going to start chopping this up a little bit. It'll start heating up. And we need to do as small a pieces as possible. Now, this is only 1 pound of sausage, and we need 1.5 pounds. So I'm also adding, because I happen to have made pizza last night, this is Jimmy Dean hot sausage. I'm going to add this to it as well, so that we have plenty of meat in our meat sauce. Okay, the reason we have so much meat in here is because we are, of course, doubling our recipe on the meat sauce, and that includes the sausage. So I'm going to show you what this looks like when it's all heated up and ready to put in our sauce. Okay, I've sauteed my hot sausage. You can see there's a little bit of pink in there, so you didn't want to over brown it because you don't want to overcook it. You're going to be cooking it in the sauce as well. So you just wanted it browned enough so that it's not raw, totally raw, but there are some little pink spots to it because it still needs to cook a little longer. And I'm going to add all of this sausage to our sauce, because this is going to really, and you can see there was not a lot of grease involved with this sausage either, so there wasn't a lot of too much grease that you need to take off. And you want that sausage flavor to meld in with this tomato sauce as well. So now we're going to let this simmer, continue simmering. It's probably got another 45 minutes to go. It's already been simmering for about 15 minutes. And while this is simmering, I'm going to show you in just a moment how to make the bechamel sauce. I'm going to go ahead and just break off kind of pieces of this fresh basil. so it also can meld in with this sauce. You can always use more fresh than you do dried basil or any dried seasoning. You can use more of the fresh than you do. Okay, we're going to mix this in here too. So it will also meld with the flavors of the other garlic, onion, tomato-y sauce. Okay, we're starting our bechamel sauce, but meanwhile, this is still simmering. And once in a while, you need to come over here and mix in your sauce. Make sure things are going nicely. You can see it's thickening up nicely, but we have a ways to go before it's completely melted. So we're going to put the lid back on it, leaving it open so some steam can escape. Meanwhile, we have over here, getting ready to make our bechamel sauce, okay? Basically, we're making a roux, and right now what you're taking is we have a half a cube of butter. Now, once again, I'm halving the recipe because I'm only making one lasagna for the rest of this sauce and the rest of the lasagna. So I'm halving the recipe. So I'm going to put the 4 tablespoons of butter and 3 tablespoons of flour to make the roux. And anytime you've ever made a roux, flour and butter together, you kind of just, but meanwhile, while I'm making this, I've got my heat on here because we need to scald 3 cups of milk. So I've got the heat on in this other pan. And once this is scalded, we will add that to our larger pan. So that's going to be on the heat. We're watching until we get the little bubbles for scalding. Meanwhile, I'm going to mix in this butter with this flour to make the roux. This is going to be the thickening agent for our sauce. And in a moment when we put it all together, I'll show you what we do and show you the seasonings that we're going to add to this as well. So this needs to bubble for about a minute or 2. The milk is just about scalded when it starts having bubbles around the edge. We use the same feature when we're doing breads that need scalded milk. You don't want to scorch milk. So I just tested it. It's really quite hot. I'm waiting for it to it's just before it boils, and you don't want to scorch. So we're just waiting 1 more minute. I've got my butter and flour. You don't want to brown that too much either. That's been sitting here on off for a little bit. Okay, we're going to take this. Oops, we're going to keep this on right here on about medium, and I'm going to take this back over here and put this scalded milk in our roux that we made. I've got this on about medium heat, so it won't take long to start thickening up. I've got this kind of down between medium and low right now. We're going to start adding a little bit of seasoning, about a 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm just guessing on this. 1/8 of a teaspoon to a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and that gives it a really interesting, cool flavor. We're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. I'm going to add probably a 1/2 teaspoon of this. You can use kosher salt. I like to use my Himalayan pink salt. And we want to have fresh ground pepper. That makes a huge difference in this bechamel sauce. And we're also going to add a couple of teaspoons of sugar. Now all we're waiting for this is to thicken, and put it on the back burner until we're ready to put the whole thing together. We're making our ricotta mixture that's going to go into our lasagna. And what we need is authentic ricotta cheese. Right here, this is Galpani, which is a really good Italian brand, okay? So this is what we're having. And we're only making the half-size recipe because we're making only 1 lasagna today. So it calls for 1, this is a 2-pound container. You only want 1 pound, which we've already added to our bowl. We also just added 1.5 cups of Parmesan cheese to our mixture, okay? And we also added 1 egg. And to that's gotten it so it's all kind of very smooth. And we've also added a teaspoon of salt and quite a bit of fresh ground pepper. You want to have a lot of that fresh ground pepper taste. And to that mixture, I'm adding fresh parsley. If you only have dry parsley, that's fine too, but this really makes it too. So at least 1/4 cup of that to go in here. You can always add more fresh herbs than you do dried herbs to the mixture. Okay, this is all mixed in and ready to go. And the only last thing that we're going to put together, we've made the bechamel sauce. Our meat sauce, tomato sauce, has been simmering for almost an hour. And all we need to do is make our noodles, and we're going to put the whole thing together. I'm ready to start boiling my lasagna noodles. And I think you can buy already ready cooked lasagna noodles, but I've always done it this way. Okay, I'm going to be putting in, I want 4 on each layer, so I'm going to be putting 3 layers, so it'll be 12 altogether. So there's 16 in this package. But what I've done is I've added about a tablespoon of salt to this water. This is a great stock pot pasta pan, but you can see it has the holes in the bottom there, so that when I drain out the water, it'll just leave the pasta. And this is going to boil. This is boiling water right now. And I'm kind of crisscrossing these so that they don't stick together. So I'm going to do 12 of these. That leaves me 4 left, which I don't need. Okay, you don't want to cover this. This will start boiling up again, and I'm going to be putting this on for 8 minutes to boil. Okay, and then when I'm finished, in fact, you know what, I'm going to put the rest of them in just in case I decide to use them all. I may decide to. So you can see how I crisscrossed them so that they don't stick together. Okay, don't put the lid back on, it'll come back to a boil, and it's actually, even though it doesn't look like the water's boiling, it's very, very hot and it's cooking them. So for 8 minutes, we'll put those on, and as you can see over here, our sauce is about ready. It's cooked down quite a bit from the 2 cups of water that I put in for us to cook down. So it's been probably a little over an hour that I've been making all of these ingredients, and that's fine. This is like one of those all-day sauces. As long as you keep an eye on it, you can let those flavors and garlic and onions and peppers meld all day long. So this is as authentic as I think as you could get if you went Italian. So this is a favorite recipe. I've had so many great compliments on it. So if you want to take the time to do something special, and that's why I make usually 2 at a time, but we'll see it a little bit when we put the whole thing together. We have the ricotta, the noodles are finishing up, we have the sauce here, and then we have the bechamel sauce as well. Okay, see you in a little bit. It's 8 minutes are up to cook the pasta. As you can see, I'm going to lift this right out very carefully out of the pan, out of the steaming, boiling water. And I'm going to drain it right back into the pan. I'm going to turn this off. See, that's not very many noodles when you think of all that water, but you do need all that water so that the noodles do not stick together. So it's really great to have one of these pans. But if not, just use a regular big pot to do it. Okay, so I'm going to drain this now, and then I'm going to take this carefully, get as much water out as possible, over to my sink, and I'm going to turn on the cold water because I want to stop the cooking. I'm going to get my spoon here. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just stir this up a little bit. You don't want those noodles breaking, but I need the cold water to stop the cooking and to cool them off. Okay, and then when that's done, I'm going to go ahead and take each noodle and lay it across. I've got you can put a little bit of oil in the bottom of your pan. I just have parchment paper to keep it from. Okay, we're ready now to put the lasagna together. And so this is as close to as anything I have as a lasagna pan. And the reason you want to have a lasagna pan is it usually has high sides because you're going to be making several layers of all of this, and it needs to be a deep pan. So make sure you have that when you do your lasagna. First thing I'm going to do is just do a quick spray onto my dish to make sure that nothing sticks. And I'm going to put 1 cup of the sauce that we've been using in the bottom of the pan. Spread that around. The next thing I'm going to do is take my noodles that I'm going to layer starting from the very edge of the pan, and I'm going to overlap them so you can get plenty of noodle taste. So I'm going to put like probably 4, maybe 5 on each layer. I'm only going to be doing 3 layers altogether. Okay, here we go. And the next thing we're going to do is put our ricotta cheese across the bottom. So you're going to divide this amount of ricotta cheese into 3 different layers. So this is about how much we're putting on here. Okay, and then we are going to put a little bit of our shredded mozzarella cheese on top of that. You want generous amounts of that, covering everything. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is put a layer of our bechamel sauce on here. We're just going to kind of plop it along and just the best we can cover it a little bit like this. This has got that little bit of nutmeg. It's got the milk, wonderful pepper flavor as well. We're going to put that layered here as well. Okay, it looks like we have plenty of that. And then the next thing we're going to do is add more sauce on top of that. Some more ricotta cheese. Now, just so you know, you can make this ahead of time and put this in the refrigerator or even in the freezer for when you're ready to bake, but you do need to take into account that this is a very dense dish and it will take quite a long time to heat through, so you got to make sure it's thoroughly thawed out. I've done this before in the past where I didn't quite have it and then the center of it's not finished and done because it wasn't warm enough. So I'm making this lasagna the day that we're eating it so that I shouldn't have a problem, but it's still going to take, you know, anywhere from 45 to 50 minutes, and if you have it cold at all, it'll take probably 70 minutes, but you want to make sure that it's all the way heated through. Okay, some more mozzarella. And some more of our bechamel sauce. This gives it a really creamy texture and flavor too. And then on top of that, then we're going to add some more of our... Here we go, one more time. This should feed, honestly, 15 people. Because it's a very deep dish and it's very yummy and creamy, and you can't eat too much of it. I guess you could, but you won't need to. And we're going to put a little bit more of that on top too. Our last layer of bechamel. Now I'm going to put this on low in the oven because I don't want it to cook too fast. I don't want anything to burn around the edges, so I want it to maybe take a little bit longer to heat through. Okay, I'm going to put the other top layer on top of this. So you're using about 6 cups of sauce altogether. Now I'm going to put a little bit of more mozzarella on top. And I'm also adding a little bit more, a little bit of Parmesan Romano. I'm going to finish up my bag. And the rest of my mozzarella. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this to kind of blend it in with the sauce so that the mozzarella doesn't burn on top. I'm going to put aluminum foil on top of here, put it in my oven, and we'll show you what it looks like when we take it out and ready to serve. Our lasagna, you saw me put it all together so you know what's in it. And we put it in the oven at 350 degrees, and I had it in for an entire hour because I want to make sure this center here was completely hot still. So it's a big, huge bowl of lasagna, actually a nice big dish. So to get the whole thing evenly heated through took an hour for me to do that. If you happen to refrigerate yours and do it later, make sure you add that extra time in to get to room temperature. And the best idea is to take it out of your refrigerator and get to room temperature before you put it in here, because you don't want to have it burned on the outside and not done in the inside. Okay, so enjoy. I hope you learned something new about lasagna and how great it is to make. I do this once a year, and that's just it, because you saw how much time and effort it took to make it, but it is a special dish, and I hope you enjoy. Happy holiday.